Hello, welcome. In today's video, we will talk about the update for Cemu on Android, which brought better compatibility and fixed color issues that were previously wrong. But were there any other improvements besides that? We will also have a summary of Update 0.6 of Citron, and lastly, it seems the war continues. 2 Ryujinx forks have already been taken down, and now it's Green Dev's turn to receive a DMCA on GitHub. If you want to buy original games while saving a lot, check out Instant Gaming, the digital store that sells games for various platforms, such as PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Get games of all genres with discounts of up to 95%. You'll also find a variety of gift cards and credits for other services. You can pay for your order through your credit card on a website with a 4.7 rating on Trustpilot. You're buying games directly from Instant Gaming, not from other retailers. If you encounter any issues, Instant Gaming offers 24/7 support. And this month, Instant Gaming is offering a great discount on the newly released Monster Hunter Wilds, with up to 51% off, ensuring the lowest historical price for the game. Check out the price comparison with Steam's pricing. What are you waiting for to save? Links in the description. It had been a long time since Cemu for Android received any significant updates. The emulator still suffered from several issues, such as incorrect colors, low performance, below average compatibility, controller glitches, and even the lack of the D-pad in some games. We always knew it was still in an early stage of development. Now, after this long period without updates, we finally received a new one. And from what I tested, there have been some improvements. Compatibility has increased, and serious issues have been fixed, such as the incorrect rendering of colors, which used to make most of the screen dark. Additionally, Yoshi's Crafted World shaders have been fixed. Tekken Tag Tournament 2 and Zelda Breath of the Wild saw a slight performance boost, not enough yet, but it's still progress. Now let's take a closer look at each of the games I tested, highlighting if there were improvements, regressions, or if they still have issues. And at the end, I'll talk about the titles that still don't work. But before that, don't forget to leave a like to support the video, and if this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel. The first game I tested was Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. In previous versions, it had vertex explosions, making it completely unplayable. Now, it's playable in the first stage, with decent performance and graphics. Also, you can increase the resolution since hardware usage stays around 50%. Mario Kart 8 received important fixes, and the colors have finally been adjusted. The performance is decent, and once this version is more optimized, it could run even better. However, it's still not playable because one of the main issues hasn't been resolved: the infinite loading when changing tracks. Overall, compared to the Nintendo Switch version, it's still better to play it there, even with the micro stutters. Super Smash Bros., with its huge number of shaders, I hadn't tested until now. Although it consumes 100% of the GPU, the gameplay is decent and has no major issues, even with 4 characters on screen. I imagine it still needs a bit more optimization to improve the experience. Another game that had a partial fix is Sniper Elite 2. Previously, the D-pad didn't work correctly, which prevented players from progressing in the campaign, as early in the tutorial, you needed to use the D-pad to place a trap on the ground. This bug has been fixed, but there's still a small graphical issue with textures and shadows in the game. Even so, I consider the game playable. The performance is decent, and if you feel comfortable, you can even increase the resolution. Splatoon has also reached a playable stage, but with some caveats. The gameplay flows decently, and the speed is good most of the time. The issue lies with the motion controls. When this option is enabled in the emulator, the game gets misaligned, as if the controller is in a different position. Also, the button to reset the controller position doesn't work properly, leaving the height sensor always miscalibrated. This should be relatively easy to fix. Tekken Tag Tournament 2, which previously had severe performance issues, vertex explosions, and characters blinking, has finally been fixed. It now runs normally, but at least on my device, there's a slight lag, probably due to the low GPU power, which is almost always at least 90% usage. Warriors Orochi 3 Hyper has some minor lighting issues, but overall, it's a light game, ideal for those who want to play on more modest devices. Up until my test, I didn't notice any significant graphical or performance issues. Xenoblade Chronicles X also saw a considerable performance improvement, but it still struggles quite a bit in this regard. It may require better hardware than a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 to run without issues. I progressed further into the game beyond the initial area, and from what I could see, it seems to be working. Yoshi's Woolly world already had decent performance but suffered from several shader issues, especially on the character heads. Now, those issues have been fixed, making the game fully playable. The performance is good, and you can even increase the resolution if you like. No more graphical issues. The most anticipated game, without a doubt, is Zelda Breath of the Wild. In previous versions, the game reached about 7 FPS in enclosed areas and also had color issues. Now, at least that problem has been fixed, and the colors are normal. However, I still can't recommend it as the best option for Android, because to maintain 30 FPS, you would need a very powerful GPU. On the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, the maximum I could get was about 20 FPS. Lastly, I tested Zelda Twilight Princess. The performance was already good, and there were no color issues, but the minimap still has errors that haven't been fixed. Now, let's talk about the games that still have issues. Ninja Gaiden 3 has serious image aspect problems. The gameplay is completely distorted, and the character is rendered in the wrong size on the screen. 007 Legends can load, but when it reaches gameplay, the controls simply don't respond, whether using an external controller or the touchscreen. This is a recurring issue with this emulator. Bayonetta 2 still has problems and crashes as soon as the tutorial starts, right when the first shaders are compiled. Batman Arkham City suffered a regression. Previously, it was playable with some graphical issues. Now, the visual errors fill the entire screen, making it impossible to proceed with gameplay. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 and Ghost simply don't start. Tekken Tournament also doesn't start. FIFA 13 doesn't get past the initial screen. Sonic Lost World freezes at the main menu. Splinter Cell Blacklist crashes right at the start. These are the updates for Cemu. The new update has significantly improved the emulator, but there's still a long way to go, especially in terms of performance optimization. I hope that next month the project will receive more meaningful updates. If there are any new developments, I'll bring them to you. Now, moving on to Citron, version 0.6 has finally been released. If you watched my last video where I talked about the PGO project, which promises a performance boost of between 5% and 20%, know that this improvement hasn't been implemented in version 0.6 yet. I spoke directly with the developer, and at the moment, she has only managed to apply this to the Windows version. So, I imagine that when it's released, PGO will come first to that platform. Speaking of what version 0.6 brought in terms of updates, Citron received a robust update for Android, improving compatibility across devices. I saw games running even on a Redmi Note 8 with 4 GB of RAM. I even own that device, but I didn't have time to test it because of the tests on Cemu. The performance isn't ideal yet, and I had to lower the resolution, but if you have a more basic device, it's worth trying out the new Citron. Memory management has been improved, including native code execution, optimized memory access, and enhanced error recovery. Another major highlight is that Citron became the first Nintendo Switch emulator for Android to implement multiplayer mode for compatible games. This mode doesn't work with all titles yet. In my test, I managed to connect Windows to Android, but when trying to enter gameplay, the Android device simply froze. I'm not sure if this happened because I used a local LAN, but if you tested online another way, let me know in the comments which method you used. It's important to remember that the online mode is still in development, and as I mentioned in my last video, it features crossplay across all platforms Citron is available on, including Windows, macOS, Linux, and Android. The new version also brought improvements to the emulator build, with initial support for PGO only on Windows, optimizations for each platform's recompilers, updates to external dependencies, and tweaks to ensure greater stability. There were graphic enhancements, such as improvements to the Vulkan API, better memory allocation, optimized management for devices with low RAM, and improved memory recovery during resource shortages. Shader compilation has also been optimized. Regarding anti-piracy, the team has implemented firmware requirements for game initialization, improved validation procedures to reduce data corruption, and removed automatic key generation. Now, key management is done directly in RAM. Additionally, references to the Quick Start Guide have been removed, error messages about ROM loading have been replaced with more neutral warnings, and the project minimized its legal responsibility by removing specific instructions. Now, users are directed to community resources if they need support. Regarding some questions that have been popping up in the comments, I see a lot of people questioning or even accusing me of bringing more details about Citron than about other Switch emulators. Some people say that Citron is inferior to other projects and ask why I don't give the same attention to those competitors. The answer is quite simple. Citron's developers, Zep and Camille, invited me to actively participate in the community, reporting bugs and suggesting improvements. In return, I have early access to what will be released in the future. Now, do you know which other projects give me the same kind of access? None. I've tried reaching out to other developers, and if they wanted to disclose something publicly, I'd definitely bring it to the channel. But I've never received any feedback. My channel has always been open to any developer who wants to talk about their projects with me. Unfortunately, some people simply don't respond, and there's nothing I can do about it. If, in the future, news about other emulators comes up and I have concrete information to share, I'll certainly bring it to you. In the meantime, I continue to cover what's accessible, and what I can actually test. Switching topics again, it seems that the war between emulators and Nintendo is never-ending. As I mentioned in the previous news video, I received a DMCA on a Git clone I made of Ryujinx. In my case, it wasn't a big problem since I'm too much of a novice to modify anything in the code. My DMCA was reviewed and confirmed as valid. However, less than 24 hours later, the Ryujinx mirror also received a DMCA. The last update I got was that the lead developer was seeking legal support to respond to the notice and keep their fork on GitHub. The deadline was only 24 hours, and as of when I wrote this script, the GitHub page was still online. This might indicate the problem has been resolved, or that the DMCA was false, although the developer himself stated he verified the notification and confirmed its authenticity. And it happened again. This time, it was the turn of Ryujinx managed by GreenDev, who claimed to have received a DMCA, resulting in the development on GitHub being halted. However, the emulator will continue to be developed. For now, he recommends that everyone update their projects. I did this about 10 hours before posting this video, and the auto-updater was still working fine. He also asks users to download any artifacts of interest. The project's Discord will remain active, which indicates that the issue is limited to the DMCA on GitHub. But will this witch hunt against emulators begin again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And that was today's video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.